Happy Friday. Happy last Friday before Christmas, December 2019. Happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, life coach, trauma healer, and writer. And today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is lost for the holidays. Lost in the holidays or lost for the holidays, one of those two. I have a lot of thoughts when it comes to the topic of being lost for the holidays. For one thing, there is potentially the loss of self. There's also geographic loss, right? Like maybe you're used to being in a certain family household and you're not in that household anymore because through marriage, you're now married with another family and you're in their house, or there's divorce and there's loss of the regular holiday family dynamic that you're so used to, and everybody's now found their own configuration. There's loss as in death, right? You're used to somebody being there for the holidays, parent, sibling, spouse, and they're not there anymore, and you've had 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 holidays with them, and they're no longer there. There's also loss of belonging. Like, where do I belong? If I don't belong with this family, do I belong with my friends? Do I belong home? Where do I belong? Loss of belonging. I also want to bring up, I'm going to be covering all these things, I'm just getting the initial thoughts out there. There's also, I want to bring up loyalty to context. I think that the holidays is a great example of how we can be sometimes unconsciously loyal to context. So we have a context right now. It's the holidays, okay? At least in this part of the world, in the U.S., in many parts of the world, it's Christmas time, it's Hanukkah time, it's New Year's time, it's time off of work, it's time where people gather, and there's a certain feeling and vibe to life around this time, and there's tradition that we are which is a context that we are unconsciously loyal to. There's the context of food, right? There's a context of eating. So we are in an abundant food time. Let's eat. Let's feed ourselves. Let's feed others. Some people go out and feed the homeless. So there's a big food context that we are on some level loyal to at this time of year, right? Like, oh, I'll just throw on an extra couple of pounds, figure it out after a holiday, right? There's this sort of like the context of togetherness. And so, the context of togetherness is an example of context is like, that's always there, whether or not you're together with a family or a partner, whether or not you're connected to people, it's sort of always there. It's heightened around the holidays. The level to which we are connected or disconnected to people around the holidays, that context is sort of heightened. I'm also going to be covering context for my New Year's video. I have some ideas about the context of time, so I'll potentially be plagiarizing my own video in 2 weeks from now. But the context of time, so it's going to be 2020, which is super exciting. It's a new decade. It's an interesting time for renewal. It's an interesting time to look at one's mortality. When you have a new decade, it's like, wow, I lived to see a new decade. And it's like not only what is the next year going to hold, but what is the next decade going to hold, right? So the New Year's Eve provides us a context as well, and a way in which to think and frame our lives, anticipate, predict, and plan. And it's not even really true. right? So in other countries, it's not going to be 2020, it's going to be other years. Um, so we are unconsciously loyal to the the numbers that we've been counting since we were born when it comes to years. You know, in other countries, it's not even New Year's Eve. This is our New Year's Eve. You know, the Hebrew year is 5780. Gosh, I hope I got that right. Please don't get mad at me if I didn't get that year right. Um, so, you know, there's other calendars and there's other concepts of time and there's other ideas of the beginning of time and from whence we came and the timeline and evolution of humanity. There's so many ideas of it, but we are, you know, those of us who observe New Year's Eve. It's happening in what is it? 2 weeks from now, or 10 days from now, we are unconsciously loyal to the context of it's 2020, it's a new decade. So we expand and surrender into context. Okay. So now I'll return back to, you know, my thoughts on being lost for the holidays. You know, I'm curious to know, please email me if you're having some experience of feeling lost on the holidays, okay? Whether you're actually with your family, but you still feel lost. Like, who am I? Do I belong with these people? Or there's a sense of loss where, like, I love my family, I'm with my family, but there's a family member that passed and they're not here. Or you're traveling for the holidays, or you're doing something brand new for the holidays that isn't even a tradition. You're following no tradition for this holiday, and so there's a sense of loss, and that actually loss can be kind of beautiful if you're trying something brand new and throwing out tradition. And that can be a practice to bring in so many areas of your life. Like, where in your life are you simply following tradition? And where in your life can you throw out tradition and actually be in the space of, like, full invention and creation? One of the beautiful things, I think, about tradition is that it can give us the opposite feeling of loss, the feeling of being found. Right? You have the same foods over the holidays. You play the same games over the holidays. You're with the same people over the holidays, and it gives you a feeling of connection, belonging, of relaxation, of home, of safety. It connects you with your history. It's interesting because I think that there's two sides of tradition. If we didn't have tradition, then I don't think we wouldn't be able to build cultures and build societies, because it's the repetitiveness that lends to creation. But also, I think the repetitiveness can add to complacency and stunt our evolution. So I'm going to propose the idea that if there is some feeling of loss that you're feeling throughout these holidays, in any of the number of categories that I mentioned, that certainly feel the feeling of loss, whether it's sadness, whether it's like a sort of like bittersweet reminiscing, whether it's a loneliness. Lean into the feeling. Because in my work as a trauma healer, any feeling that you have is a feeling that should be felt. And anxiety is a product of feeling a feeling and going, I shouldn't feel this feeling. Leaning towards substances is a product of feeling a feeling and going, I shouldn't feel this feeling. I want to feel some other feeling. I want to change my state. And we usually fall even deeper into depression when we feel a bit of sadness and a bit of depression, and we go, oh my gosh, I should not be feeling this way. Not only should I not be feeling this way, but I'm going to judge myself for feeling this way. And then a whole bunch of cognitive reactions, and I call them a cognitive trauma series. When you have a thought, then you believe that thought, then you have another thought that exacerbates the first thought, then you have another thought that exacerbates the first two, and it just keeps going like a domino effect, like a cognitive domino, like a cognitive series of traumatic dominoes. Best analogy I can come up with right now. So that, and then you start to spiral down into that cognitive trauma series of thoughts and feelings instead of just sticking with the feeling, not judging it, and not thinking that you shouldn't feel it. So getting back to the thought of feeling lost. Feeling lost is very much a past-based reaction. It's feeling lost has almost everything to do with the past. Feeling lost is a reaction to comparing the present moment to all that you've known in the past. Huge, it's an appropriate feeling for the holidays, because a lot of our experience of the holidays comes from our experience from the past, our history, our upbringing. And the holidays for a lot of us are a huge part of our memory bank. And so feeling lost is comparing the now to the past, and how the now replicates the past or doesn't replicate the past, or feels like the past or doesn't feel like the past, or there's a loss of the past, there's a change in how things have gone. There's a shift in the memory chain, or we feel great because we're repeating some awesome thing from the past that we know, feels like home from the holidays. And so as you're potentially leaning into any sort of feeling of loss, notice how your feeling of loss is a reaction to the past, which is completely fine and completely makes sense. Feel it, lean into it, and then I invite you to then lean into the future. Lean into what is a new creation, what could potentially be a new tradition, as opposed to feeling the loss of previous tradition. Where in your life can you move forward into an experience of belonging, as opposed to feeling the loss of past belonging, or having never belonged, or finding where you fit in the family? Where can you move towards creating yourself as somebody who belongs wherever they are? That you, in and of yourself, you are an organism that belongs. And it doesn't depend on your company. And it doesn't depend on your location. You just are belonging. You just are safety. And that is really leaning towards and out of tradition. That is leaning into creation. And what better future to create yourself when you start to heal, shed trauma, shed tradition, and start to create yourself anew. Certainly keep the traditions that you think still feed you and nourish you. Have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy Hanukkah, and whatever other holidays people may be celebrating. Feel good within yourself, no matter who you're with or no matter who you're not with. Feel home and safe within yourself. And I may or may not put out a rerun next week because I'll be traveling for the holiday. But I'll pick a good one if I do. You are awesome. Life is now, and recreation is right in front of you. Bye. Okay, one more thought. I just wanted to add the idea of the loss of inner peace, which I think ultimately is is one of the ideas of the holidays is peace, right? And I think the most important piece is inner peace, because when you have inner peace, then you can then have peace in connection with others. And so there's so many ways to lose inner peace in the holidays, right? You're rushing around, you're cooking, you're traveling, you're getting your stuff together, you're going from one place to the next, you're going from house to house, you're hoping you don't forget anything, you're hoping that you behave the right way around certain people, or little, like I said last week, what were they, past purges? I think that was a phrase I said last week, where you have like a purge of the past come out of your mouth with some family member, or there's arguments or something around communication or lack thereof during the holidays, or buying gifts for people or not buying gifts for people. Anyway, there's like sometimes a tornado of energy around the holidays moving through them, and which lends to a loss of inner peace. So I'm just throwing out the concept of inner peace, which is no matter what you're doing, from event to event, okay? If you're sitting home alone, if you're sitting home with one person, if you're with 20 people, if you're with 50 people, if your environment keeps shifting over the holidays, if you have some sort of a heartbreak over the holidays, see how you can consistently move through all of it with inner peace. That no matter what the circumstance, it cannot blow out the candle of your inner peace. Here's to your inner peace. Happy holidays, everybody.